Spring break, the time when freedom meets excitement, and anything can happen. What was supposed to be the highlight of their year soon turned into a nightmare. In this video, we'll dive into 4 terrifying true stories of spring break gone wrong. These chilling accounts will make you think twice before booking your next vacation. From stalking on a beach to murder on a cruise ship, these stories are a stark reminder of how quickly fun can turn into fear. So, get ready, because what you're about to hear might just make you rethink everything you thought you knew about spring break. Story 1. The Stalker on the Beach in Fort Lauderdale. Fort Lauderdale, Florida, is one of the most popular spring break destinations in the United States. Known for its sunny beaches, vibrant nightlife, and the promise of unforgettable adventures, it's no surprise that thousands of college students flock to this beach town each year. However, for 21-year-old Jenna, her spring break in Fort Lauderdale was about to take a chilling turn. The start of Jenna's spring break. Jenna had been dreaming of a relaxing getaway with her friends. She had worked hard in school and was looking forward to a week filled with fun and excitement. Upon arrival, everything seemed perfect. The clear skies, the warm ocean breeze, and the endless opportunities for adventure. Her group of friends spent the days lounging by the pool, drinking tropical cocktails, and enjoying the picturesque beaches. Each night, they would head to one of Fort Lauderdale's bustling nightclubs, where the music was loud and the energy was high. Jenna felt like she was truly living her best life. However, it wasn't long before things started to feel a little off. The first encounter. The first signs of something unusual came on the second day of their vacation. Jenna noticed a man who seemed to always be in the background of her day. At the bar, on the beach, near the pool, and even walking down the street. At first, she thought nothing of it. Fort Lauderdale was packed with tourists, and it made sense that she would see some of the same faces here and there. But over the next few days, his presence became more consistent. He would appear at odd times, always lingering in the background, never approaching, just watching. Jenna chalked it up to coincidence at first, but she started feeling uneasy. There was something about his presence that made her feel watched. At night, when the group gathered at the local nightclubs, the man would appear again, lurking in the shadows, never engaging directly with anyone. His eyes always seemed fixed on her, and she felt the weight of his gaze wherever she went. When she tried to shake off the feeling, she realized that he was always there, a silent observer in her otherwise carefree spring break. The escalation. One afternoon, after a few drinks by the pool, Jenna's friends decided to go for a walk along the beach. Jenna, feeling a bit overwhelmed by the constant party atmosphere, opted to take a stroll by herself. She had been enjoying her vacation, but the thought of a quiet walk by the ocean sounded refreshing. As she walked further down the beach, Jenna couldn't shake the feeling that someone was following her. She stopped and looked over her shoulder. There, in the distance, was a man, just standing there, watching her. Her heart raced. She quickly turned and began to walk faster, but the man seemed to be keeping pace. The anxiety builds. Jenna couldn't escape the sense of paranoia that began to cloud her thoughts. She had never been one to get easily spooked, but this situation was different. The man had an unsettling energy about him. She could tell he wasn't just a casual tourist. He was fixated on her. That night, she confided in her friends about the odd man, and they joked it off, saying she was probably just imagining things. Still, Jenna couldn't shake the feeling. Every time she saw him, it was like her anxiety would spike, her heart would race, and a cold chill would sweep through her body. She could no longer enjoy the carefree spring break experience that she had imagined. A nightmarish realization. Later that evening, After a long day of beach activities and partying, Jenna decided to take a quick walk along the beach to clear her head. She told her friend she would be back in a few minutes. As she strolled, she again noticed the same man, this time much closer. Jenna tried to remain calm, convincing herself that maybe she was overreacting. But as she reached a more secluded area of the beach, she saw the man again, this time walking directly toward her. He was no longer just watching from a distance. Jenna's heart raced as she realized she was alone on a quiet stretch of beach with no one around for miles. Her instincts kicked in, and she felt her body tense up, preparing for something bad to happen. She quickly turned around, but the man was already blocking her path. Her breathing became shallow, her palms sweaty as she tried to figure out how to escape. The confrontation. The man stopped just a few feet away from her. "Are you lost?" he asked with a calm, almost rehearsed smile. Jenna instinctively took a step back, but he moved closer. His eyes were piercing, his smile unsettling, and Jenna could see a faint glint in his eyes. Something not quite right. She tried to speak, but found that her voice wouldn't come. Panic surged through her as she realized how vulnerable she was. There were no people around, no one to hear her screams. Before she could react, she felt a hand grip her arm, pulling her closer. Her heart skipped a beat, and her stomach twisted in fear. She screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the vast emptiness of the beach. In that moment, it felt like no one would hear her. The rescue, just as Jenna thought things were about to take a turn for the worse, a group of her friends appeared on the beach, having noticed her absence. They rushed over, yelling at the man to let her go. The man quickly released her and turned to run. One of Jenna's friends managed to grab his jacket, but the man broke free and vanished into the night. Jenna was left shaken and terrified, but safe. Her friends quickly escorted her back to their hotel, and they called the police. The officers arrived and took statements from everyone involved. The man was never found, and the case quickly went cold. Authorities couldn't find any trace of the man or the vehicle he had been seen near. It was as if he had vanished without a trace. The chilling aftermath. Although the immediate danger was over, the experience left Jenna with an overwhelming sense of fear. She couldn't shake the image of the man's eyes, the coldness in his smile. His words echoed in her mind. "Are you lost?" What did that really mean? Was he planning something even worse for her? She began replaying the moment over and over in her mind, trying to make sense of it. The police investigation didn't lead anywhere. After a few days, Jenna learned that several women had reported similar incidents in Fort Lauderdale over the past few years. Each woman had described a man who would follow them, always lurking, always watching. Some believed he had been involved in more sinister activities, but the police had never managed to make an arrest. The lingering fear. Jenna left Fort Lauderdale earlier than planned. Her spring break had turned into a terrifying ordeal, one that she would never forget. The beach, once a place of relaxation and freedom, would always remind her of the man who stalked her, forever turning her ideal vacation into a nightmare. Months after the incident, Jenna still experienced bouts of anxiety. She had trouble going to the beach or even walking alone at night. She found it difficult to trust anyone again. It wasn't just a man she feared. It was a thought that someone could be lurking, waiting, watching. She kept imagining the same eyes following her wherever she went. She confided in her friends and family, but the incident had left a deep scar that no one could fully understand. Her friends reassured her that the man was just a creep, but Jenna couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't just a random stranger. There was something about the way he approached her, the way he watched her, that made her believe it was part of something much darker. But she also made a promise to herself. She would never let that man, or anyone like him, steal her sense of safety again. She was determined to reclaim her peace of mind, even though the fear would always linger at the edges of her thoughts. Story 2. The Kidnapping in Key West. Key West, Florida, is known for its laid-back atmosphere, stunning sunsets, and lively nightlife. For many, it's the perfect place to escape the pressures of life and have a stress-free vacation. But for Kayla, a 22-year-old college student, spring break in Key West would soon turn into a terrifying experience she would never forget. The start of Kayla's dream vacation. Kayla had spent months planning her spring break trip with a group of friends. After weeks of late-night study sessions and stress-filled exams, she was eager to get away from the hustle and bustle of college life. Key West, with its promise of tropical weather, beachside relaxation, and vibrant nightlife, seemed like the perfect destination. The first few days were everything Kayla had imagined. The group spent their days sunbathing on the beach, taking boat rides, and exploring the island's famous landmarks. At night, they would venture into local bars and clubs, enjoying the music, dancing, and carefree atmosphere. For Kayla, it felt like she had entered a world where nothing could go wrong. Little did she know, something much darker was lurking just around the corner. Meeting the man at the bar. On the third night of their trip, Kayla and her friends found themselves at a popular local bar, celebrating the success of a relaxed day on the water. Kayla was enjoying herself, laughing and chatting with her friends, and she quickly caught the attention of a man sitting at the bar. He was in his late 20s, well-dressed, and seemed friendly enough. He struck up a conversation with Kayla, offering to buy her a drink. At first, she wasn't sure what to think. He had a calm, charming demeanor, and she thought it would be harmless to chat with him for a little while. They talked about their respective vacations and life at school, and Kayla found herself enjoying the conversation. He was an excellent conversationalist, attractive, articulate, and engaging. After a couple of drinks, Kayla felt slightly buzzed, but nothing out of the ordinary. The man seemed nice, so when he offered to buy her another drink, she didn't hesitate. They moved to a quieter spot on the patio of the bar, where they could chat without the noise of the crowd. The start of her nightmare. Kayla's memories of the night began to blur after that. She recalls feeling a little lightheaded, but she chalked it up to the alcohol. The man seemed concerned for her, offering her water and telling her to take it slow. But when Kayla took a sip of the drink he had handed her, she immediately felt a rush of dizziness. Her vision blurred and her body felt weak. The next few minutes were a blur. Kayla recalls trying to stand up, but her legs gave way beneath her. Everything around her spun out of control. The man helped her to her feet, his hand strangely firm on her arm. Kayla tried to protest, but the words wouldn't come out. Her head felt heavy, her thoughts scattered. The man told her everything would be okay and led her out of the bar. Waking up in a van. The next thing Kayla remembers is waking up in a strange, dimly lit space. Her head throbbed and she tried to move, but something was holding her down. Panic surged through her body as she realized she was no longer at the bar with her friends. She was in the back of a van, and her hands were tied to the seat with some kind of rope. She couldn't remember how she had gotten there or what had happened to her. The only thing she could do was scream, but her voice was hoarse, and no one seemed to hear her. The man was gone. As her mind cleared, Kayla realized the horrifying reality of her situation. She had been kidnapped. To escape, Kayla's mind raced as she struggled against the ropes, trying to break free. She felt an overwhelming sense of terror, knowing she was at the mercy of a stranger. The van rocked as it drove along the dark, empty roads. She could hear the hum of the engine, but saw nothing outside the windows. It felt as though she had been driving for hours, miles away from any help. Desperation took over. Kayla knew she couldn't just sit there and wait for something bad to happen. She had to escape. In a burst of panic-fueled adrenaline, Kayla managed to free her hands from the ropes. Her heart pounded in her chest as she slowly opened the van's door. It was a risk, but it was her only chance. The van slowed down, and without thinking twice, Kayla threw herself out of the moving vehicle. She hit the ground hard, but managed to scramble to her feet. The van didn't stop. Kayla ran as fast as her legs would carry her, heading for the nearest store, where she finally found safety. The aftermath and police involvement. Kayla stumbled into the store, breathless, heart racing. The store clerk immediately called the police, who arrived within minutes. Kayla was taken to hospital to be examined, and the authorities began investigating the incident. They quickly pieced together what had happened. The man had been seen in several bars in the area, targeting women who were intoxicated, offering to help them to their rooms, and then drugging them. The police traced the van, but by the time they tracked it down, the man was gone. He had disappeared into the night, leaving behind only chaos and fear. Kayla had narrowly escaped a much worse fate. While her physical injuries were minimal, the psychological toll would stay with her for years to come. The realization and the danger of trusting strangers. Days later, after she had returned home, Kayla couldn't stop thinking about what had happened to her. The man she had trusted, who had seemed so kind and helpful, had been a predator. She realized that she had let her guard down in a way she never had before, trusting a complete stranger in an unfamiliar place. The incident had left her shaken, but it also sparked a deeper understanding of the dangers that can lurk in seemingly innocent situations. Kayla couldn't shake the thought that there could be other women who had been victimized, just like her. Unfortunately, the police could never find the man, and he was never arrested. Kayla's spring break had been ruined. What started as an escape from stress in college life had turned into a terrifying reminder of how quickly things could go wrong. Though her body recovered, she was left with scars that no one could see. The fear, the uncertainty, and the anxiety never quite went away. Story 3. The deadly fire at the resort in Mexico. Mexico, with its tropical climate and beautiful resorts, is a dream destination for many spring breakers. With its pristine beaches, luxurious accommodations, and vibrant nightlife, it's easy to see why millions of tourists flock to Mexico every year. However, for a group of college students on spring break, their dream vacation would quickly turn into a nightmare. This is the story of a deadly fire that struck a popular resort, leaving behind tragedy, heartbreak, and a lasting reminder of the dangers that can lurk behind the walls of even the most luxurious hotels. The start of the vacation. It was supposed to be the perfect vacation. Sarah, 19, and her friends had planned their spring break getaway to Mexico for months. They had chosen one of the best resorts on the Riviera Maya, known for its white sand beaches, all-inclusive drinks, and endless entertainment options. Sarah had saved up for this trip for a long time, and she was ready to let loose and unwind after a grueling semester of exams and assignments. Upon arrival, the group was in awe of the resort's beauty. The sprawling grounds were dotted with palm trees, and the clear turquoise water stretched out before them. They checked into their rooms, eagerly unpacking their bags and getting ready for their first night of fun. They spent the day lounging by the pool, sipping cocktails, and enjoying the sunny weather. It felt like paradise. That night, they attended a theme party at the resort's nightclub. The music was loud, the drinks were flowing, and everyone was having a great time. Sarah and her friends danced the night away, feeling free and alive. Little did they know, things were about to take a devastating turn. The first signs of trouble. It was around 2 a.m. when the fire started. At first, it was a faint smell in the air, almost like something burning in the distance. People shrugged it off, thinking it was just a minor issue. The resort was known for its size and its many amenities, so it was easy to dismiss it as nothing more than a minor incident. However, the smell grew stronger, and the faint haze of the air turned into something more sinister. Smoke started to pour from one of the resort's kitchen areas. At first, people didn't know what was happening. There was no immediate alarm, no warning signs. The resort staff continued to serve guests, seemingly unaware of the growing threat, but the smoke quickly intensified. Sarah and her friends started to feel uneasy, and they noticed other guests looking around in confusion. It wasn't until an employee rushed through the club, shouting for everyone to evacuate, that they realized something was wrong. The panic sets in. By then, the smoke had filled the air, and the once lively nightclub had turned into a scene of chaos. People were running in all directions, trying to figure out what was going on. The staff attempted to maintain order, but panic was setting in. People began to scream, some of them pushing and shoving their way to the exits. Sarah's heart raced as she grabbed her friend's hands. Try and stay calm. They had been told that the resort had fire alarms, sprinklers, and emergency procedures in place, but it was clear that those systems had failed. The smoke grew thicker, and the flames could now be seen through the windows of the building. It was no longer a small fire. It was a full-blown disaster. As they rushed toward the exits, Sarah realized how poorly organized the evacuation was. The hallways were crowded, and there was no clear direction on where to go. Many guests had to push past others just to make their way to the nearest exit. The horror of the fire. The group finally reached the main lobby, but it was chaos. Guests were scrambling to get outside, and the sound of sirens could be heard in the distance. But the fire was already out of control. The staff had tried to contain it, but the fire had spread too quickly through the building. Flames roared as the fire consumed the resort's restaurant and kitchen areas. Sarah and her friends were ushered out onto the street, but they watched in horror as the fire continued to rage behind them. Emergency responders were on the scene, but the damage was already done. The fire department arrived too late to prevent the worst of it, and they began to fight the flames as best they could. But for 6 people, it was already too late. The tragic toll. 6 people died in the fire that night, and dozens more were injured, many suffering from smoke inhalation and burns. Some guests were rushed to the hospital, while others were treated on the scene. The fire was eventually contained, but the damage was significant. The resort's beautiful architecture was scorched beyond recognition, and the once peaceful grounds were filled with the aftermath of a tragedy. The authorities launched an investigation into the cause of the fire, and it was later determined that faulty wiring in the kitchen area had sparked the blaze. The resort had been aware of the wiring issues, but had failed to address them in a timely manner. The fire safety systems had not been properly maintained, and the lack of a functioning alarm system contributed to the panic that ensued. For Sarah and her friends, the vacation was forever tainted by the horror of that night. What should have been a carefree spring break turned into a nightmare that they would carry with them for the rest of their lives. The aftermath and emotional impact. In the days that followed, Sarah struggled to process what had happened. The fire had taken the lives of innocent people, and she couldn't help but feel guilty for having been there. She had survived, but she would never forget the horror of watching the flames destroy everything in its path. The survivors were given counseling, but nothing could erase the trauma they had experienced. Sarah found it difficult to sleep, her mind haunted by images of the fire. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the smoke, the flames, and the panic in the faces of the other guests. Sarah's friends were also struggling, each of them dealing with the trauma in their own way. They felt a sense of relief that they had made it out alive, but they couldn't escape the guilt and sadness that came with the loss of life. They had been so close to the fire, and the thought that they could have been one of the victims lingered in their minds. Story 4. The murder on the cruise ship. Cruise ships are a popular choice for spring break travelers, offering a unique mix of relaxation, entertainment, and travel. The idea of exploring exotic locations, enjoying luxurious amenities, and indulging in fine dining seems like the ultimate vacation. But for a group of spring breakers on a cruise to the Caribbean, their dream vacation would take a dark and deadly turn. This is a story of a murder aboard a cruise ship that shocked everyone on board and left lasting emotional scars. The start of the cruise vacation. James, a 24-year-old college student, was looking forward to his spring break with his best friend, Ryan. The two had been planning this cruise for months, eager to escape the stresses of school and enjoy a week of fun, partying, and relaxation. The cruise ship they boarded was one of the most popular options for young travelers, known for its lively nightlife, water sports, and entertainment options. The ship departed from Florida, sailing towards the Caribbean with stops at several popular island destinations. The first few days were filled with excitement, pool parties, nightclub events, and themed dinners. James and Ryan were having the time of their lives, meeting new people, and enjoying everything the cruise had to offer. However, things took a sudden, horrific turn on the third night of the trip. The fight at the nightclub. It started like any other night. The ship's nightclub was packed with young spring breakers, and the music was loud and pulsing. James and Ryan had been drinking and dancing, enjoying the carefree atmosphere. That's when they noticed a commotion near the bar. A group of college students had been involved in a heated argument. At first, it seemed like just a typical dispute between drunk passengers. But then James and Ryan heard shouting, followed by the sound of fight breaking out. The two men involved were pushing each other, and their words were laced with anger and resentment. James couldn't see the cause of the fight, but it quickly escalated. It was obvious to everyone in the club that things were about to get violent. As the confrontation continued, James saw one of the men, a tall, broad-shouldered individual named Derek, pull something out of his pocket. At first, James thought it was just a bottle or a broken piece of glass, but the realization came too late. Derek had pulled out a knife. The stabbing incident. In a split second, Derek lunged forward and stabbed the other man in the chest. The entire nightclub froze. People screamed in shock as the victim staggered backward, clutching his chest. Derek, his face twisted in rage, stood there for a moment, staring at the blood on his hands. Panic ensued as people ran in all directions, trying to escape the madness. James and Ryan were frozen in shock, unable to comprehend what had just unfolded before them. The victim collapsed to the floor, and the nightclub was quickly evacuated. Crew members rushed to assist the injured man, but it was too late. The knife wound had been fatal, and the victim was pronounced dead shortly after. The investigation begins. Within minutes, the ship's security team arrived on the scene, followed by the authorities who were alerted to the crime. The entire ship was put on lockdown, and everyone was required to stay in their cabins while the investigation took place. The crew began questioning witnesses, including James and Ryan, who had seen the altercation from a distance. The police immediately arrested Derek, who was found in his cabin trying to hide the knife. His face was cold, as if the act of violence had not fazed him. Derek claimed that he had acted in self-defense, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. It quickly became clear that Derek had been the aggressor in the altercation. The victim's identity and the aftermath. The victim was later identified as Mark, a 23-year-old student who had been traveling with a group of his friends. Mark's friends were devastated, as they had witnessed the entire event unfold. They had all been looking forward to a fun spring break, but in an instant, their vacation had turned into a nightmare. As the cruise continued its course, many passengers were shaken by the incident. The ship was supposed to be a place of luxury and relaxation, but for everyone on board, it had become a place of fear and uncertainty. Passengers who had been unaware of the situation were left to process the news that someone had been murdered on the ship. The captain of the ship held an announcement over the PA system, reassuring passengers that the situation was under control, but the damage had already been done. The legal proceedings and emotional impact. After the ship returned to port, Derek was taken into custody by local authorities. He was charged with second-degree murder, and his trial will be one of the most talked about cases in the local media. The details of the fight, Derek's motive, and the tragic loss of Mark's life were plastered across newspapers and television screens. The emotional toll of the murder was not just limited to the victim's friends and family. James and Ryan, who had witnessed the crime, were left with scars that would last a lifetime. They couldn't shake the image of the bloodied nightclub and the moment the knife plunged into Mark's chest. Both men had trouble sleeping for weeks, and they struggled to process the trauma they had experienced. James confided in his parents and friends, but nothing seemed to help. He could never forget the horror of what he had witnessed on the cruise, and it made him question the safety of his surroundings. The once carefree vacation had turned into a dark, harrowing memory. The long-term effects. As time passed, James and Ryan slowly began to recover from the emotional wounds left by the murder. They sought therapy and counseling to cope with the trauma. James, in particular, struggled with the guilt of having been so close to the victim. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was something he could have done to prevent the violence. The cruise line also faced significant fallout from the incident. Passengers who had been on the ship during the murder were offered counseling and refunds for their tickets, but the damage to the company's reputation was long-lasting. Many spring breakers who had previously booked cruises with the line canceled their trips, and new customers were hesitant to book with the company due to the fear of such a violent event happening again. A reminder of the dangers of traveling. The murder aboard the cruise ship served as a sobering reminder that even in the most luxurious settings, danger can strike at any time. For James and Ryan, their spring break would always be marked by the tragic events they had witnessed. The carefree days they had imagined were forever overshadowed by the brutal reality of the violence that occurred on that ship. To this day, James reflects on the events of that night, constantly reminded of the fragility of life and the unpredictability of the world around him. He tells others who are planning their vacations to be aware of their surroundings and to never let their guard down. As he learned firsthand, danger can lurk anywhere, even in the most idyllic places. Spring break isn't always the carefree escape we imagine. These stories remind us that danger can lurk in the most unexpected places. Whether you're heading to a beach, a resort, or a cruise, always stay aware of your surroundings and trust your instincts. If you found these stories chilling, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life horror stories. And leave a comment below. What would you do if you were in these situations? Share your thoughts, and let's keep the conversation going. Thanks for watching, and remember, not all vacations are what they seem. Stay safe out there.